Now, this trip is President Trump's second official visit to Europe while in office. Joining us right now to weigh in on this historical significance, former Florida Congressman, Fox News contributor, retired Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Colonel West, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria. How are you?
So characterize what we're seeing here. How important is this visit to Europe right now? Put it in context. Interesting that he chose Poland as the first stop.
Well, I think what you're seeing is a contrast between the previous reset with Russia and the reset with the new Europe, and that's the Eastern Europe and Poland, the Baltic states, and other places. This is a place where we should probably be looking at extending our foreign policy, our relations, but most importantly, what you're going to see a lot of discussion with is about the oil and natural gas trade that we can get started going with. And of course, I think that we're going to have one of our first shipments of LNG to Poland coming up within this month, definitely next month. Because if we can extend our energy exports into Eastern Europe, that will undermine the economy of Vladimir Putin. It will make it very difficult for him to continue on with some of the aggressive actions that we've seen him take.
Colonel, it's Dagan McDowell. You know, it's not just importing our natural resources into Europe. It's just the fact that we have a growing energy sector, one that's becoming increasingly dominant and healthy. And just by that excess production, which you've actually seen this year, there's a glut of supply around the world. You keep prices low. That takes power out of the hands of Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's one of the key things. You know, Vladimir Putin cannot continue with the extensive military operations and support that you see in Syria if his economy is failing. And so what we have to come to understand is there are three pillars to security. It is economic security, energy security, and national security. And the bridge between the economic and the national security is our energy security. And the fact that we can be able to export those resources into Eastern Europe so that gets them off of support from Russia, that really does bolster our national security and put us in a stronger foreign policy position.
You know, Colonel, I'm really curious. Donald Trump's going to be meeting with Putin today. There's a lot this meeting has to do. One, we have to see whether or not, does it seem like Donald Trump and Putin are in cahoots? Two, can we expect to see that Russia and the U.S. will cooperate over the North Korea thing? Can we trust whatever it is that Russia promises, or is that just going to be farcical?
No, I don't think you can trust Vladimir Putin and Russia. As a matter of fact, Vladimir Putin and Russia told John Kerry and the Barack Obama administration that they had taken care of the chemical weapons in Syria. We knew that not to be the case. They had said that they would deal with ISIS. We knew that that was not to be the case. We saw what they did in Crimea. We see what they're doing in the Ukraine. We know that they're threatening the Baltic states, and they continue to buzz our aircraft and our naval vessels there in the international waters of the Baltic Sea. So we cannot trust Vladimir Putin, so we need to operate from a position of strength. And like I said, this is a complete contrast to that insidious little yellow box with the red button called the reset.
Okay. So what do you want to hear out of this conversation then? I mean, the war in Syria likely on the agenda when the president meets with Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of this meeting in Hamburg tomorrow. It comes as Secretary of State Rex Tillerson suggested that the administration is prepared to consider joint operations with Russia in Syria, including no-fly zones. Here's what Tillerson had to say about the relationship between the U.S. and Russia before departing for Germany last night. Listen to this, Colonel.
We're at the very beginning, and I would say at this point, it's difficult to say exactly what Russia's intentions are in this relationship, and I think that's the most important part of this meeting, is to have a good exchange between President Trump and President Putin over what they both see as the nature of this relationship between our two countries.
I mean, the Ukraine invasion has to be front and center, right? I mean, that has to be one of the number one or two issues that the president brings up with Putin, right?
No, absolutely right. The Ukraine invasion, the fact that we know that Russia is supporting the Taliban against our forces in Afghanistan, that's been confirmed by the Secretary of Defense and also General Nicholson, the commander on the ground there. But the most important thing we need to say to Vladimir Putin is stop your support and your collusion with Iran, because Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism in the world.
Right.
And if you want to have better relations with us, you need to cut off your relations with Iran.
Heather?
Colonel, you mentioned various types of security, and we know Trump is going to be tough on North Korea. And are economic sanctions the next step in terms of being tough with North Korea?
Yeah, the economic sanctions are important. I think that we need to look at how we can utilize our Pacific Fleet in a naval blockade. You know, interestingly enough, later on this month, there's going to be a movie coming out called Dunkirk. And if you think about the 3 to 4 years prior to that operation at Dunkirk, we saw the Nazi war machine being built by Adolf Hitler, and we did nothing. And when he went in and took the Rhineland, the Western powers did nothing. We can sit back and continue to show fear and recalcitrance in dealing with North Korea, but eventually something is going to burst. This guy has fired off 83 missile tests since 2011. 17 missile tests just in these first few months of the Trump administration. That is more than what happened with his previous father and grandfather.
Yeah, it's a great point, Lieutenant. Great to see you, sir. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
We're watching that. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West joining us.